Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the village as Lilian stood before the altar. Her heart pounded in her chest, the steady rhythm growing louder in her ears as the village elder began the ancient rite of the coming-of-age ceremony. Around her, villagers gathered, murmuring prayers to the gods for a prosperous harvest, for health and for peace. But Lilian's thoughts were elsewhere. She wasn't tight like the other girls her age. There was something inside her, something untamed and wild that had always stirred beneath the surface. She couldn't explain it, but it was there, a fire, an energy she couldn't quite control. And today, with the weight of the ceremony pressing down on her, that energy hummed louder than ever. The elder Eve's voice boomed, pulling her back to the present. "Hi, Lilian, daughter of this village. Today you stand before us as a woman ready to face your future. May the gods grant you strength, wisdom, and peace in the years to come." Lilian swallowed, her mouth dry as she nodded. She glanced at the crowd, catching the worried eyes of her adoptive father, a man who had always been kind, but distant. There was something he wasn't telling her, something hidden in the way he looked at her. But before she could dwell on it, the elder raised his hands and the ceremony reached its climax. Suddenly, the air around her crackled with energy. Lilian felt it first as a tingle in her fingertips, then a rush through her vein. Her breath hitched, and she stumbled back, her heart racing. It was happening again, that strange feeling she had tried so hard to suppress, but this time it was stronger, overwhelming. The villagers gasped as a faint shimmer of light surrounded her, and Lilian's vision blurred. She felt a surge of heat run through her body, followed by a sharp pain in her chest. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest as if her heart were about to burst. And then, in an instant, everything changed. A roar deep and powerful rumbled in her ears. Her eyes snapped open, and before her she saw the impossible. A dragon, massive and terrifying, stood in a clearing, its eyes glowing with the same fire she felt inside her. But it wasn't real. It was a vision, a manifestation of something deep within her. The villagers screamed and scattered, terrified of the dragon, mispresent. But Lilian couldn't move. She was transfixed, her body frozen as the dragon stared into her soul. Her father's sea voice broke through the haze, pulling her back. The dragon disappeared as quickly as it had come, leaving only the trembling earth and the terrified villagers in its wake. She struggled to her feet, her body weak, but before she could say anything, the elder grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with fear. What have you done?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know," she stammered. "I don't know what's happening to me." But deep down, she did know something had awakened inside her, something ancient and powerful. That night, the village was in an uproar. The elders met in secret, whispering in the dark, while the villagers locked their doors, fearful of what they had seen. Lilian sat by the fire in her small cottage, her adoptive father pacing restlessly. "You should have told me," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "ere you knew something like this would happen." Her father stopped pacing and turned to her, his face lined with guilt. "I didn't know when," he said softly, "but I knew it was only a matter of time." "Tell me?" she demanded, her hands clenched into fists. He sighed, sinking into the chair across from her. "Fire your mother's CUA," he began. "Shy was not from this village. She came from the eastern lands, a place where dragons once roamed free. She was different, just like you. She had the blood of dragons running through her veins. And when she met your father, a dragon of the eastern peaks, they fell in love against the will of both humans and dragon." Lilian's breath caught in her throat. "A dragon price," she whispered. Her father nodded. "He was one of the most powerful dragons of his time, but their love was forbidden when you were born. They knew they couldn't stay here. They wanted to protect you, to keep you safe. But one day, they disappeared, leaving you in. I cared. I don't know if they're alive or dead, but I do know this: what you felt today, what you saw, it's like your dragon soul. It's awakened to awaken." Lilian stared into the fire, her mind racing. A dragon soul had explained so much. The strange sensations she had always felt, the dreams, the power inside her, that she couldn't trade control, but it also raised more questions than answers. What does it mean? It means that her father said grimly that you are part of a world far bigger and more dangerous than this village. And now that your power has awakened, others will come for you, both humans and dragons. Lilian felt a chill run down her spine. What do I do? Her father reached out, placing a hand on hers. You find a way to survive, and you find a way to bring peace between the two worlds. The next morning, Lilian set out from the village with a heavy heart. She had lived there all her life, but now it felt like a distant memory, a place she no longer belonged. Her path led her east toward the dragon territories, the only place where she might find answer. The journey was long and perilous. The closer she got to the eastern peaks, the more dangerous the land became. Strange creatures lurked in the forests, and rogue dragon clans prowled the skies, attacking anyone who dared venture too close. But Lilian was not alone. Along the way, she met Eric, a young knight from a nearby kingdom, who had been sent to negotiate peace between humans and dragons. His idealism and determination to end the war were a stark contrast to the brutal reality of the conflict. He saw in Lilian a chance to make a difference, a way to unite the two sides. "You are the key," he told her one evening as they camped under the stars. "You have the blood of both humans and dragons. If anyone can bring peace, it's you." Lilian wasn't Tyranno, so sure, her powers were growing stronger every day, but she still struggled to control them. The fire inside her was wild, unpredictable, and it scared her. "I don't even know if I can control this power," she said, staring into the flames. What if I make things worse?" Eric smiled gently. "You want TI, they've seen the way you care about both humans and dragons. You're not just a weapon, Lilian. You're a bridge between two worlds." His words gave her hope, but doubt still gnawed at the edges of her mind. They continued their journey, joined by Zerene, dragonborn exile who had once lived among the dragons, but had been cast out for reasons he refused to share. Zaren was a mystery to Lilian, his motives unclear, but he knew more about her powers than anyone else. He taught her how to harness the dragon soul, how to channel its strength without losing herself to it. "Your power is a gift," he told her one night as they rested by a mountain stream. "But it's also a curse. The dragon soul is fierce, and if you let it take over, you'll lose yourself. You must find balance, or you will become just like the dragons you seek to stop." Lilian listened carefully, practicing the techniques he showed her. But every time she used her powers, she felt the pull of the dragon soul growing stronger, threatening to consume her. Finally, after weeks of travel, they reached the eastern peak. The land was desolate and harsh, the sky darkened by the constant presence of dragon. High above, Lilian could see the majestic spires of the Dragon King set castle perched on the edge of a towering cliff. Her heart raced as they approached the gates, where two massive dragons stood guard. Their eyes glowed with an eerie light as they gazed down at the group. "Who dares approach the Dragon King?" one of the dragons growled, its voice reverberating through the mountain. Lilian stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. "I'm Lilian, daughter of both dragon and human. I seek an audience with Dragon, the Dragon King." The dragons exchanged a glance, then slowly stepped aside, allowing them to pass. The castle loomed before them, a dark and foreboding fortress built into the mountain itself. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Dragons of all shapes and sizes filled the great hall, their eyes fixed on Lilian as she entered. At the far end of the hall, seated on a throne carved from black stone, was Drakenkan, the Dragon King. His scales were the color of midnight, and his eyes burned with an ancient fire. He stared down at Lilian, his expression unreadable. "You are the one they call Lilian," Drakenkan said, his voice deep and commanding. "Tyre, the child of both dragon and human. What do you see?" Lilian took a deep breath, forcing herself to stand tall. "I see peace." She said, her voice firm. "Tyre, I see. To end the war between humans and dragons." Drakenkan's eyes narrowed. "And why should I care about the affairs of humans? They have brought nothing but destruction to our land. Because this war will destroy us all." Lilian replied, her heart pounding in her chest. "Steer humans and dragons alike, but together we can stop it." Drakenkan was silent for a long moment, his gaze piercing. Then slowly he rose from his throne, his massive wings unfurling behind him. "You speak of peace," he said softly, "but peace is not won with words alone. If you wish to earn my trust, you must prove your loyalty. You must face the trial of ancestors and survive." Lilian's heart raced as Drakenkan's words hung in the air. The trial of ancestors. She had heard stories of it, whispers of a deadly test that had claimed the lives of many who dared to face it. Only the strongest dragons survived the trial, and no human had ever attempted it. Her hands trembled slightly, but she held her ground, unwilling to show fear before the dragon king. "I accept," she said, her voice steady despite the anxiety tightening her chest. Jakakan's eyes glowed with a dangerous intensity. "Che, very well. Daughter of two worlds, the trial will begin at dawn. Rest now, for it may be your last night." Without another word, Draken turned and vanished into the shadows of his throne. The dragons in the hall began to disperse, their eyes still lingering on Lilian as if they were already sizing her up for failure. Zurin, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke once they were alone. "The trial of ancestors is not just a test of strength," he said, his voice low. "It's a test of your very soul. The ancestors will see your heart, your fears, your desires. If they find you lacking, they will consume you." Lilian turned to him, her jaw set with determination. I have no choice. "If I don't, then Dakakan will never listen. The war will continue, and more people, more dragons will die." Zarin nodded, his expression grave. "I'd all be waiting when it's over. Just remember what I told you. You must find balance, or you'll be lost." Lilian tried to sleep that night, but her mind was filled with visions of what lay ahead. She knew the trial would push her beyond her limits, but she had no idea what form it would take. Would she be forced to fight? Would her dragon soul take over completely? She didn't know, and that uncertainty gnawed at her, making sleep impossible. When the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, Lilian stood at the entrance to the Hall of Ancestor. The massive stone doors loomed before her, carved with intricate depictions of dragons from centuries past. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she approached, as if the spirits within were already watching. Drakakan appeared beside her, his dark form imposing in the morning light. "Beyond these doors lie the spirits of every dragon who has come before. They will judge you. If you fail, you will not return." Lilian swallowed her fear and nodded. Without another word, the doors creaked open, and a cold, unnatural wind rushed out from the darkness. Within, she stepped inside, and the doors slammed shut behind her. The darkness was suffocating, the air thick with the presence of something ancient and powerful. For a moment, she couldn't see anything, but then a faint light flickered to life, revealing a long, narrow pathway lined with towering statues of dragons. Their eyes glowed faintly, watching her every move. As she walked deeper into the hall, the air grew colder, and a voice deep and resonant echoed around her. "Lilian, daughter of dragons, why do you seek peace between our kind and the humans who destroy us?" She stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. "As the war will destroy both sides," she replied, her voice strong. "Tai, we cannot continue like this. There must be another way." The voice was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, colder this time. "You are weak like the humans you defend. Dragons do not bend to the will of others. We take what is ours, we conquer." Lilian clenched her fists, fighting back the growing sense of dread. "I'm not weak," she said, her voice firm. "I have the strength of both humans and dragons. I can find a way to unite us." A sudden rush of wind whipped around her, and the statue's eyes flared with bright, fiery light. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and the path ahead dissolved into nothingness. Lilian felt the pull of her dragon soul surging within her, a wild burning power that threatened to consume her if she let it. She closed her eyes, focusing on the balance Zarin had taught her. She had to control it. She couldn't lose herself now. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the hall. She stood in an open field, the sky above her dark and stormy. Before her stood a massive shadowy figure, an ancient dragon, its form shifting and indistinct as if it were made of smoke and fire. The dragon-sized voice echoed in her mind, loud and all-encompassing. "Prove yourself, child of both worlds. Show me the strength of your dragon soul." The ground shook as the dragon charged toward her, its massive claws tearing through the earth. Lilian's instincts screamed at her to fight, to unleash the full force of her power, but she knew that if she let the dragon soul take over, she would lose herself. She had to find a different way. As the dragon bore down on her, Lilian focused on the connection between her human and dragon side. She drew on both the strength and resilience of the dragon and the compassion and determination of her human heart. She would not fight with brute force alone. She would use her mind, her will. The dragon lunged at her, and at the last moment, she sidestepped, her movements fluid and precise. She reached out, placing her hand on the dragon's flank, and in that moment, she felt the full weight of its power. It was overwhelming, almost too much to bear, but she didn't let go. She held on, focusing all her energy on finding balance, on controlling the wild force that surged through her. The dragon roared, thrashing against her grip, but slowly it began to calm. The shadows that swirled around it faded, and its form solidified into something real, something tangible. Lilian felt the connection deep within her soul, a bond that linked her to the ancient spirits of the dragons who had come before. You have the strength. The dragon sighed softer now, but do you have the wisdom to use it? Lilian stepped back, releasing the dragon as it lowered its massive head to meet her gaze. I will not let this power control me, she said. I will use it to end the war, to bring peace between dragons and humans. There is more to strength than violence. The dragon's eyes glowed with approval, and it nodded slowly. You have passed the trial. The ancestors accept you, Lilian, daughter of dragons. Go now and fulfill your destiny. The world around her shifted again, and suddenly she was back in the Hall of Ancestors. The statue's eyes had dimmed and the cold air was gone. She stood alone, but she felt the presence of the dragon spirits all around her, watching, guiding. The doors creaked open, and Lilian stepped out into the light. Drakon stood waiting, his expression unreadable. You survived, he said, his voice low. I did, she replied, her heart still racing from the intensity of the trial. Drakon's gaze lingered on her for a long moment before he spoke again. You have proven yourself worthy. You carry the strength of the ancestors within you, but strength alone will not bring peace. Lilian nodded, already knowing the truth in his words. Seer sigh. There's more to be done. There's a greater enemy at work here, one that threatens both humans and dragons. Drakon's eyes, allies, narrowed. What do you mean? There, and then Lord Seraph. He's been manipulating the war from behind the scene. He's summoning dragons using their magic to build his own power. If we don't stop him, he'll destroy us all. Drakon's wings unfurled slightly, a sign of his agitation. Terry, this human dares to challenge the might of dragons. He's already done more damage than you realize, Tyre, Lilian said, urgency creeping into her voice. He has an artifact, something that can control dragons. We have to stop him before it's too late. For a long moment, Drakon said nothing, his gaze distant as he considered her word. Then, with a slow nod, he spoke of very well. I will join forces with the humans for now. But know this, Lilian, if you are wrong, if this alliance brings more harm to my people, I will hold you responsible. Lilian met his gaze unflinching. Can't I understand, but I won't let that happen. With that, Drakon turned and spread his massive wings, launching himself into the sky with a single powerful beat. Lilian watched as he soared into the clouds, a dark silhouette against the dawn. Eric and Zarin approached her, having waited anxiously by the gate. You did it, Eric said, his relief palpable. Yuri convinced him. Lilian nodded, but there was no time for celebration. We have to move quickly. Lord Seraph, 1T, wait, we need to gather the human forces and meet him before he can strike again. They set off at once, moving with purpose through the mountains and back toward the human kingdom. Along the way, Lilian's thoughts raced. The trial had shown her the strength of the dragon's soul within her, but it had also revealed something more, a deep, unshakable connection to the ancestors, to the legacy of dragons. That power could be both a blessing and a curse, and she knew that if she wasn't careful, it could consume her. But for now, she focused on the task at hand. Lord Seraph had to be stopped, and she was the only one who could do it. The final battle loomed ahead, and with it, the fate of both humans and dragons rested on her shoulders.